I am Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, crawling all over Ocean Beach. A red crab invasion, the weather phenomenon that may be driving them ashore.
Got a traffic ticket and want to challenge it? Well, now you can without paying the fine first. I'm Peggy Pico with California's new rule and its impact on San Diego drivers. Then, travel back in time to the sophisticated Maya civilization at the West Coast premiere of Maya, Hidden Worlds Revealed at the Natural History Museum, the surprising connection to San Diego.
Performance art and religious ceremony is exactly the same thing, so I am doing both.
Ready for a walk on the dark side? Serving up a black mass, mixing ritual with circus arts. Plus, the artist who is no stranger to controversy. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. A new development tonight in a campaign season scandal connected to the man who used to work for congressional candidate Carl DeMaio. Today, Todd Bosnich pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice. Bosnich appeared in federal court this morning. His lawyer said the former campaign worker was ready to move on with his life. He was charged with lying to federal agents about a threatening email sent to DeMaio's congressional opponent, Scott Peters. He rocked the hotly contested race last fall, claiming DeMaio sexually harassed him and that he was offered $50,000 to keep quiet. DeMaio, an openly gay Republican, lost to Peters, a Democrat. Bosnich is set to be sentenced on August 31st. DeMaio responded to the latest developments today. In a statement, he says, "Bosnich's lies were incredibly painful, smeared my reputation, and derailed our congressional campaign. And Congressman Scott Peters shares responsibility for promoting Bosnich's smears, lies for political gain." As we reported last night, potential candidates may be lining up to challenge beleaguered County Supervisor Dave Roberts. KPBS investigative reporter Meetha Sharma says Roberts' political survival may rest on a criminal inquiry and public perception.
I
State your name.
Dave Roberts.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
Roberts' ascent to the San Diego County Board of Supervisors bucked the odds.
Nobody thought we could win the 2012 campaign.
The former Solana Beach City Councilman, who has adopted 5 children with his husband, was the first Democrat to sit on the board in 2 decades, and he was put there by voters in North County's Republican-tilting 3rd District. More than halfway into his tenure, Roberts has helped expand county treatment for the mentally ill, pushed for additional open space, and worked to get more foster children in permanent homes. But he is also mired in controversy.
This has been very hurtful. I wanted to be the 3rd District County Supervisor because I wanted to make this great county even greater.
Some of his ex-employees believe he's fallen short. 8 of Roberts' 11 staffers have left the office since he was sworn in as supervisor in early 2013. 3 have filed claims considered forerunners to a lawsuit. Roberts' former scheduler Diane Porter is one of the trio.
I've picked up dirty laundry. When he moved his cousin here last year and needed to file for conservatorship, and it was my duty to do that for him. I would go back and forth to the county. I filed all the claims. I went to court with him. I went and babysat the youngest son while they were in court. I mean, this went on for like 4 months.
Roberts calls Porter's claims ridiculous. Porter says Roberts also gave her campaign assignments during work hours. Roberts contends Porter volunteered for that work.
Diane Porter did exactly what Diane Porter wanted to do when she wanted to do it, and she was never asked to do anything inappropriate.
Nearly $1,000 of county money was spent to buy 10,000 Dave Roberts baseball cards. Porter says Roberts later asked her to, quote, make the cards cards disappear after questions were raised about the purchase. Porter also alleges Roberts had an improper relationship with a staffer, which the supervisor denies. Another former staffer has accused the supervisor's office of trying to pay a business consultant with a grant meant for neighborhood projects. District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis is investigating the complaints against Roberts. San Diego Mesa College political science professor Carl Luna says that what could land Roberts in criminal trouble is how government funds were spent.
It's usually the money that brings you down, and if you can find that substantial amounts of money in terms of time and in terms of office resources were diverted in inappropriate ways, that's actionable. That can bring in a DA and a grand jury.
In a third claim filed this week, a former policy advisor for Roberts says he tried to bribe her with a promotion and a raise. In exchange, she says, Roberts asked her to tell the county complaints by Porter and another staffer were false. Roberts paints his accusers as motivated by money. Together, their settlement claims total nearly $750,000. Meanwhile, the scandal has spurred momentum to unseat Roberts.
I can promise you that I will work hard and restore the trust in government.
Escondido Mayor Sam Abbott seized on the controversy in announcing his entrance into the 3rd District race this week. He says voters deserve honest representation and a supervisor who treats all people with respect and dignity. In addition to Abbott, there are at least 3 other names bandied as potential candidates. Political analyst Luna says short of a criminal indictment for misuse of public funds, Roberts' fate is likely to rely on voters. But he believes most people don't know who their supervisors are or what they do, and some don't care.
The Chargers are threatening to leave town. The economy is still not fully recovered. People are trying to pay their mortgages. On the scheme of things people worry about, I would put this down on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 2.5.
But the Republican Party of San Diego County cares. It has already sent out mailers highlighting the scandal. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
A controversy behind fake bomb threats with a San Diego link. Officers say an online video game group helped dial them in to Point Loma High School. A 10th grader is now in custody. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler has more on what's next in the investigation.
Swatting is when someone makes a fake emergency call with the hopes of prompting a strong police response. And that's what happened in early April when someone made bomb threats against Point Loma High School. Police took it seriously. But San Diego Police Lieutenant James Keck says swatting is a time waster that costs departments a lot of money.
Obviously, that was a huge investment for us. April 5th was actually Easter Sunday, so coming in on a Sunday and pulling in detectives to research the possibility of an attack.
Police say the Point Loma 10th grader arrested this week is linked to an online gaming group suspected of making false emergency calls to cities across the country and in Canada. Keck says the case could expand as investigators examine the teenager's computer and mobile phone. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
A new reality for California drivers. We told you about a new rule that will let them fight traffic tickets without paying a fine first. Peggy Pico explains how it all works.
California's Judicial Council made the ruling on Monday, and it went into effect immediately, meaning most drivers who get a traffic ticket won't have to pay the violation fine, or technically the bail, before challenging it in court. Joining me with some reasons behind the decision and its impact on San Diego drivers is my guest, legal analyst, attorney Dan Eaton. And Dan, what were some of the reasons that the Judicial Council were kind of saying that for this significant change?
Peggy, this rule was enacted on an expedited or quick basis because there was a concern that there was a certain procedural unfairness to requiring people who have speeding tickets or tickets for having broken lights to pay the full amount of their fine before they even set foot in court. And the reason, of course, they had to set that bail is to secure their appearance in court. But there was a concern that for people who can't afford it, that's not right. If they intend to challenge it, they should be able to delay paying that bail until they they actually show up in court and are found guilty of the offense.
And is that typically like a fair trial type of thing, that you have a right to a fair trial without having to, you know, pay up first?
Well, that's the basic concern that there was, is that people were going to, in an Alice in Wonderland kind of way, you have to pay, and if you can't pay, all right, well, you're going to be found guilty. Here, under this new rule, if you do a written promise to appear in court, you don't have to pay the bail before you're actually in court.
And how did it work before, just briefly?
Yeah, how it worked before is that you actually did have to pay the full fine as bail if you wanted to contest the particular infraction. And then you would show up in court, and if you won, if you successfully challenged it, you'd get your money back. This way, if you just sign a written promise and you show up, then if you're found guilty, of course, you'll have to pay the fine, but not before.
Now, is this for everybody, or are there certain exclusions? Can a judge actually say, you're going to have to pay?
There are certain exclusions. There are various provisions in the law of California that actually require you to pay a bail if you choose certain procedures. And I won't get into the specific procedures, but there's another exception under this particular rule that says if the judge has reason to suspect that you're not going to show up at court for the arraignment and the eventual trial, they can make you post bail. But if they do find that, if the judge does find that, gotta say so, and it has to have a reason for making you pay that bail before you contest the infraction.
And I also understand it doesn't apply to people with suspended licenses for not paying previous tickets, or those who have accumulated thousands of dollars worth of fines.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you are a serial scofflaw, or if you've got a really bad record, don't expect this to be a free ticket for you.
A free ticket, I like that. Now, the Western Center on Law and Poverty says nearly 5 million California drivers have lost their license because of inability to pay. The average ticket being, I guess, somewhere around $500 for a traffic ticket. The ACLU has said the former way of paying traffic fines disproportionately affected people of color. So how do you think this new rule might even things out?
Well, in the sense that poor people will actually be able to show up and challenge their tickets. As far as disproportionately affecting African Americans, that really requires you to accept this idea of driving while black and being pulled over unfairly and so on. But the bottom line is that poor people will gain greater access to the courts to challenge infractions.
And then could this new rule actually flood the courts with more people saying, I don't want to pay the fine, I'm going to challenge this?
Peggy, I actually read some of the comments from courts throughout the state about this, and they are concerned about that exact thing, that it is going to flood the courts, that people not having to put any money at stake will simply write a written promise, and therefore everybody is going to challenge their tickets because there's no cost to them for not doing so.
And could the state lose money on this?
Absolutely, and here's why. Because judges and courts are going to have to divert resources to staffing these trials, and people may very well not show up. They'll be found guilty, they'll have to pay, but in the meantime you are talking about a lot of judicial resources, and those are very expensive. Law enforcement officers having to show up for court for a trial that may never occur, and a potential defendant with no skin in the game not having had to post bail beforehand.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Attorney Dan Eaton, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
California's drought is prompting a new round of water cuts for farmers. They hold some of the state's oldest and strongest water rights. The orders affect thousands of farmers in Sacramento, San Joaquin, and the Delta watersheds. Farmers say state regulators have no authority to order them to stop pumping from those waterways. Drought conditions have prompted a new federal strategy to help prevent wildfires. It includes $10 million for land restoration projects with an emphasis on collaboration across multiple states. 3 of the projects are in California. It's part of a program sponsored by the Interior Department. Massive numbers of small red crabs have washed ashore along some of San Diego's beaches. The tuna crabs typically live in warm waters near Baja California. Experts with Scripps Institution of Oceanography say the crabs are likely drawn to San Diego's coastline because of warmer than average water temperatures. It could also be an indicator of the building El Nino.
Because they're free swimming in the water column, they're subject to changing winds, tides, currents, and sort of being pushed in different directions and subject to those different oceanographic conditions.
The last time the crabs appeared in droves on San Diego beaches was during the El Nino of 1998 and 2002. People should avoid eating them because they feed on phytoplankton, which sometimes contains toxins. It's the comeback story San Diego film fans dreamed about all morning, the end of the movie rental store Kensington Video. Online competitors Online competition was actually too much for the owners, but KPBS reporter Angela Carone says they're getting ready for a new launch and renting a few movies along the way.
Winnie Hanford is renting movies in the middle of a construction site.
Can't get away from it. You know, here we are again.
Winnie co-owned Kensington Video with her son, Guy. She retired as owner when they closed. But now Guy is launching a smaller, leaner operation, so Winnie is sticking around as an employee. Guy never really wanted to close, so he only sold off 2% of their movie inventory.
And I was really not wanting to sell off the rare ones, the eclectic ones. I mean, if you came up to me and wanted to buy Dumb and Dumber, I might actually pay you to take it, but the other stuff, no.
The new smaller space will have a juice bar and an area with couches to show movies.
We're going to have computers, we're going to have iPads, we're going to have everything technology, but we're still going to have that personal touch. That's not going to be lost. And we're still going to have my mom.
I look at movies, I look at 2 or 3 a day to make sure I do my homework.
Winnie says she's good at picking movies for customers because she gets to know them.
And also, we like to hear about them. They tell us where they've been on a trip or if they just had a knee operation, and we want to hear all those things.
And you definitely can't find that attention on Netflix. The news store will officially open in September. Angela Carone, KPBS News.
Gearing up for Stand Down, San Diego's Veterans Village has been helping homeless service members get off the streets for nearly 3 decades. It's now getting ready for its annual Stand Down event in mid-July and looking to the community for support. You couldn't miss the signs outside the Veterans Village of San Diego pointing to its donation drop-off. VVSD is looking for new or gently used clothes for men, women, and children to give away during Stand Down, a 3-day event that started by some Vietnam vets 28 years ago to respond to the overwhelming number of homeless veterans on the streets.
So far this morning, we couldn't be more pleased. It started at 6 o'clock, and as you can see, the folks are still rolling in. It's really an outpouring of support from our entire community for the veterans that we serve.
Families made up a larger portion seeking services at last year's Stand Down, where 894 veterans were served. Now, VVSD is putting the finishing touches on an 18-bed facility and treatment center exclusively for women.
As the number of women veterans in the military continues to increase as a percentage of the overall force, you know, we are seeing a greater percentage of women veterans here that are seeking services.
You can still drop off donations at the village on Pacific Highway or give online at vvsd.net. Since its start in San Diego, more than 200 stand-down events are now being held across the country. Ours is scheduled for the weekend of July 17th.
We could have an election on a new stadium in December, but will we, and what for? Supervisor Dave Roberts' troubles seem to get worse by the week. And a court battle looms over seawalls versus public beaches. I'm Mark Sauer. Join us tonight at 8:30 for the Roundtable here on KPBS.
Rediscovering an ancient civilization in San Diego with the largest display of Maya life and culture in the U.S. Peggy Pico shows us what's inside the new exhibit at the Natural History Museum.
The new exhibition, Maya, Hidden Worlds Revealed, explores a cross-section of life from ancient kings and queens to commoners, mathematicians, spiritual leaders, and more. Joining me with highlights are my guest, UC San Diego archaeologist Dominique Rizzolo and Michael Wall, the Nat's Vice President of Research and Public Programs. And Michael, this exhibition is making its West Coast premiere here in San Diego. Why did you want to bring it to the San Diego audience?
Well, we were approached by the Science Museum in Minnesota, who are the creators of this exhibit, about looking at bringing it here to San Diego so that it could be all across the United States. Previously been in Denver, it was in Boston, and clearly in Minnesota. And they thought that our connection with Mexico to the south across the border here in San Diego might create a natural audience for this particular exhibit.
I'll bet you it has already. Dominique, ancient Maya civilization was advanced and sophisticated. Where did they live and how long did their civilization exist?
Well, certainly across present-day Mexico, all of Belize, Guatemala, and portions of Honduras and El Salvador. But from the very beginnings of social complexity in Mesoamerica, we see people that we would culturally describe as Maya, and that runs from almost about 1000 BC all the way up until the time of contact, and of course very much an eternal culture and peoples with us today.
Now we understand the Mayas invented our 365-day calendar. Among many talents, there were mathematicians, astronomers, and bless them for this, they invented chocolate. So what kind of artifacts, let me ask you this, Michael, what kind of artifacts, I can ask you both actually, is in the show that's showing their lasting impact here?
There's over 200 artifacts, and they range everything from life at home for what we might say are more the common people of the Mayan society, all the way up to more regal objects associated with the rulers, and across all kind of facets of life. So a little bit of everything. And
Dominique, is there a particular object that stands out for you?
Well, so many. You know, there is one that has a connection right here to San Diego, and that's the Buena Vista vase, which was discovered by Joseph Ball and Jennifer Toshik, professors here at SDSU.
And Michael, the NAT is known for its interactive exhibitions. So what are visitors actually going to be able to do?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pleasure for a lot of families to come to the exhibit, because in addition to all these beautiful artifacts, they're going to have the opportunity to do virtual excavations of archaeological sites, in addition to building corbelled arches, which were the type of arches that the Mayans used to create rooms within some of their temples and large buildings, and a variety of other hands-on things, in addition to the beautiful objects on display.
The authentic artifacts, yeah. Many of them. So Dominique, now I understand the Maya built thousands of cities, schools, hospitals, libraries. What are some theories, or at least the top ones, on why the civilization went into decline?
Well, it did go into decline versus disappear, which is a good distinction, an important distinction. But there were a number of factors. This was beginning towards the end of the Classic period, and it was a series of events that were mostly localized in the southern Maya lowlands, the Petén of Guatemala, for example. And we see mutually destructive warfare, environmental degradation, drought, kind of an increased secularism in society, and all of these sort of brought about sort of the decline of these massive and powerful city-states.
Now, as you say, there's a myth that Maya people are no longer with us, but they are, and they speak several languages.
Yeah, well, there are over 30 Maya languages, and in Mexico, for example, today, over 800,000 Yucatec Maya speakers, and so this is very much an eternal culture. And although we saw the decline of Maya civilization in a certain specific part of the Maya world, we see a fluorescence even centuries later in the northern Maya lowlands, and of course a carryover of worldview and ideology and cultural traditions into the present day.
So much more to learn. Dr. Dominique Rozzolo and Dr. Michael Wall, thank you very much. And I want to let folks know that the exhibition, Maya Hidden Worlds Revealed, will be at the Natural History Museum in Balboa Park from June 12th through January 3rd, 2016.
Art is often about pushing not just the envelope, but people's buttons as well. And religion is a particularly sensitive one. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has a preview of a controversial Black Mass performance in which art takes on religion.
It's hard to find a definition of what a Black Mass is. It's been described as everything from a lurid book written for witch hunters, to a parody of a Catholic church service, to a satanic ritual designed to ridicule Christianity. But for Anna Januszkiewicz, the definition of Black Mass is clear. It's performance art.
It is to show that all of it is performance art. And we put together this very pretty, interesting little service. I am wearing traditionally more of an Orthodox style vestment, a mitre and kopel. It's worn because it's all theater and it's all costumes, and hopefully that will help people see that anybody can actually go out and buy vestments and perform a church service and be taken just as seriously or not.
Januszkiewicz, who is trained in dance and circus, is attracted to things that may repel other people.
My thing is to take the things that people are afraid of and dislike and to make them beautiful and show people that they're not something that you need to be afraid of.
Like a show she did for San Diego Fringe, focused on themes of pain, blood, and the medical arts. Or another show involving the ritual of a circle casting. Now she tackles a Black Mass.
Every time I tell people I'm putting on a black mass, they either don't know what it is or they know what it is, and they jokingly will ask me if I'm going to sacrifice a virgin or kittens or babies or have an orgy at the end. None of those things are going to happen. They should expect to see a church service, but also circus and dance and performance.
Repeat. In profundis. Satani. Gloria. And what you're saying essentially is, in the depths of Satan, God's glory.
The Black Mass will be performed in Latin.
Just like at a church service where you would hear the choir singing, we are doing the same thing. Ours is in Latin, and it is in praise of Satan.
She's been called evil, wicked, and sacrilegious for doing the show, and she's okay with that.
I'm not doing this really for anybody to be comfortable with it. I'm doing this to actually make people a little uncomfortable, because that's where you learn, and that's where you start to actually question yourself. I want to create more questions, not really answers, and for people to create the questions for themselves on whether or not what they're believing is what they actually believe or just something that they grew up being told. And I hope that by doing this service, that it will encourage more people to look into things that they're afraid of and not just follow the flock, and maybe think for themselves a little bit.
Yanushkevich calls her Black Mass an opinion on religion, her opinion. And for her, she sees no difference between performance art and religious ceremony. And that's likely to prompt strong reactions. But then that's what art is designed to do. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.